Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Endless Celts Podcast. My name is Stephen, the host of the Endless Celts Podcast, and I'm joined by a show regular, Anthony. How are you, Anthony?
I'm very good, Stephen. Good result at the weekend, and obviously very excited about the start of the Europa League. Bumper show tonight, so yeah, can't wait to get started.
Yeah, 100%. We're going to start this show totally different than how we would another show. So we're going to look ahead to the Real Betis game. Obviously, you know there's been lots going on for Celtic, both domestically in the boardroom, the win over Ross County, but we'll get to all that soon. But I want to introduce a special guest. Now, Anthony, you work with this fella, so I want to introduce Vicente Perez. How are you?
Hello, Stephen. Hi, Anthony.
How are you, mate? It's good to talk to you. Feel like I've just been talking to you at work.
I'm fine. Just ready for this show and for the show later on with Betis Granada.
Hey, love it, Vicente. And it's brilliant to have you on. I mean, this is a Spanish flavour to the Celtic podcast, something we've never had before, so I'm looking forward to it. And as you said there, you're a Real Betis fan, and that's our first game coming up here in the Europa League, which we're all very excited. But before we get into that, Vicente, I want to come to you about yourself, how you get into the Real Betis, and what the team means to you as a supporter.
Well, Stephen, this is interesting because I'm not from Seville. I'm from near Seville, but not exactly from the city. So some people, Sevilla or Betis fans from Seville could say the same question: why you are a Betis supporter? But basically, it's something when you are a kid and you start playing football. I used to have a teacher, and the teacher was quite, saying always to us, instead supporting, Real Madrid or Barcelona, who just, teams that they always win. Why, it's better to support a team from your region, something more local. And those days, obviously, Betis was playing well. It was a team that historically always have supporters everywhere in Spain, and obviously the colors, green and white. That was something that catch me a lot as well. And I thought, you know what? I think this is the thing I want to support. And since then, Betis forever.
I mean, the green and white colours, Anthony. I mean, they attract everybody, don't they? I mean, Celtic and Betis, and just as Vicente said there, it's the connection you build when you're younger, when you're at school, and that's very much the way I was in terms of being at school and my family as well. I'm pretty sure yourself, but in terms of Betis, Vicente, the Celtic and Betis connection, I mean, that's been spoke about now since this group has been drawn. Was that something you were aware of, even more so now that you've moved to Scotland?
Well, yes, and actually, it's interesting because before knowing that, I always thought that Real Betis colors is something to do with our flag, which is also green and white. But then, when you start listening and knowing more about football, I just found out that it was one of the first, presidents or members of the Betis team who used to live in Glasgow many years ago, and he just got in love with the Celtic colors, green and white, and he was one of the main people in Betis those days, and they decided to go for green and white for Betis when they still didn't have an official color, and just to make difference, instead having the strips horizontal, they decided to go in vertical, as you know, probably, and then later on, it just happened that when the Spain create all the regions and stuff like that. Well, our Andalusia, which is the region flag, is also green and white. But people think that the Betis colors is because of the flag, but it's actually the opposite. The Betis colors came before even the Andalusian flag, and that's all to do with Celtic, basically. That was the basically the history behind.
So basically, Real Betis are looking up the Celtic and their shirts and copying us. Is that right, Vicente?
Well, yeah. It's actually I think 2 or 3 years ago, the Real Betis did one of these batch of T-shirts, is exactly in horizontal as well. But I don't think they were expecting that they were so popular, and they just sold them out so quickly that it was impossible to get one of them. So yeah, it's a good relation between Celtic and Betis around the history.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And Anthony, we talk about the Betis and the Celtic connection in regards to the kits, but also the region that Betis Real Betis are from as well, Sevilla. I mean, us Celtic fans have happy memories, even though we lost the final, but it was a journey up to that. And that's something, Anthony, maybe, I mean, if you're hoping we can get something kind of similar this year, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It would be fantastic if that famous journey to Seville was to happen again this year. I think we would be very things would have to get very much the rub of the green for something like that to happen again. But yeah, as Vicente says there, Stephen, it's incredible to think that despite having this sort of unofficial connection and this sort of good relationship between the two sides and both sets of supporters, a lot of those friendships were renewed when Celtic went over for that match in the UEFA Cup final. But it's incredible to think that with all of these sort of little connections and good relations, that the two clubs have never met in competitive action. They're relatively both frequent flyers in Europe. But we've just never been drawn together. So I think it's a real shame that it's happened this season rather than maybe next year when fans would perhaps be able to travel over to both stadiums. I think they were looking at trying to have even a small section of Celtic supporters over, but just with the current travel restrictions, that's not going to be possible, which is a real shame because you could just picture the fantastic scenes that would have been outside the stadium. Friends across the sea sort of thing coming together to watch their teams play. I think Celtic and Betis, they're very symbolic of everything that's good about football in a world where sadly that's not always the case. But I'm really looking forward to Thursday night. I think it'll be quite the occasion.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony, you make a great point there in terms of the away support. There was an allocated kind of gate for them in terms of fans visiting the stadium and stuff, but that didn't quite come off. And as you said, due to COVID regulations, it got kind of took off the table, so to speak. But coming to yourself, Vicente, talking a wee bit about the Real Betis Stadium. I mean, I've seen pictures of it. Obviously, I've never been, but it looks fantastic. Is it a stadium that you visited often when you were younger?
Well, because I live, my parents live about 3 hours from Seville. I didn't have many opportunities to go to the stadium, but I remember a few times escaping without telling my family to Seville when I was studying in Granada to see, some games. That was when the stadium wasn't not totally completed, but still, it was about 50,000, 40,000 people, all supporters cheering at the same time, and the atmosphere is unbelievable. And now with the stadium, the one of the goals finished and completed as the rest of the stadium. Now I think it's 55,000 people what they can fit there, and honestly, it's unbelievable. The atmosphere is something that you need to see. Probably you are familiar because I'm sure Celtic ground is also amazing to see the football live. But when you go to your stadium and you see about 50,000 people all supporting the same team, it's something really impressive. I was lucky that I managed to see a few good games, and also something. I remember once. I don't know if I can tell you that as well. I remember once I went with my girlfriend at that time, and she was a bit. Oh, I don't think it's a good idea to go to football. Maybe it's dangerous. And I was, nah, come on, it's okay, it's a good atmosphere, blah blah blah, and you will surprise. And she was shocked because obviously it's like I was putting the example. It's like going to church because the whole family with kids, all different generations, going to see the football and singing and clapping hands and just cheering. And she was totally surprised that it was actually no scary and good to see football in life, which probably she never really want to see the football and the television because she thinks it's boring. But it's totally different story when she saw in real life, and I think that's the main thing, when you go to the stadium, to see that life.
Yeah, as you said, I mean, 18 months, every football fan in the world basically didn't get a chance to go see their team at a football stadium. When I was back watching Celtic play Hearts, it was emotional, and it was emotional for I think everybody who's been there, Anthony. And I mean, Vicente rightly says it's the connection you feel when you walk into that stadium. And yes, many people watch on the TV. It's totally different. Don't get me wrong. I watch Celtic wherever I can on dodgy streams on a phone at 6 inches on a tablet wherever I can get it. But he's right, Anthony, isn't he? In terms when you go to the stadium, you feel the atmosphere. It just makes you fall in love with the club all over again, especially being 18 months out.
Absolutely, yeah. My first game back at Celtic Park was the Hearts game as well, Stephen. And it was just the game itself is just one small part of the full match day experience. It's seeing your friends and meeting like-minded people that you don't even know, but you all share the same sort of common purpose for 90 minutes, wanting your team to be victorious. You have a few drinks, you catch up, you shoot the breeze, you see the team news coming through, and you sort of debate about the pros and cons of each player in each position and whatnot. It's just it's something that the whole footballing world's missed sadly the last 18 months, but it's absolutely great to have it back now. As I say, I've not visited Betis' stadium myself, but having worked closely with Vicente, whenever he's back home on his holidays, he's been over for a couple of games, and he always shows me the pictures when he gets back of him and his father and whatnot being at the stadium, and it seems very a similar setup to Celtic Park. Everyone just there to have a great time. So yeah, it's like I say, I think it's going to be a special game on Thursday night.
Yeah, I mean, coming to yourself, Vicente, again, we'll get into a bit of the details about Real Betis as the current state of play at the moment in La Liga. And these are managed by Pellegrini. Obviously, people know him from being a Manchester City manager. He won the league as well with them, which is a good achievement. But in terms of the form Betis have get into the game, Vicente, I mean, I think it's 2 draws and a loss against Real Madrid at the minute. And obviously, these are playing Granada tonight because this was recorded on Monday, so that's at 9 o'clock. But how do you feel coming into the game against Celtic in terms of the Real Betis form?
Well, as sadly happens at the end of last season, we are having problems with the striker. We don't have a guy in front who can score goals, easily, and that's why we have only 2 draws at the moment, and we are struggling to create occasions, for goal, and that could be the weakest. Link for Betis if they don't manage to find a striker soon. They sign off one striker from Real Sociedad not long ago, 2 weeks ago. I don't think he's playing tonight against Granada because he's still new in the team. But I'm hoping that it's a solution because you need to score goals. If you cannot really go too far if you always draw games because you only get 1 point. And that was the problem last year, and we continue with the same problem. And it's gonna be hard, but well, let's hope that they find a solution because obviously it's just the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about some of the star players that we as Celtic fans should look out for. Now, how do we look at the Real Betis squad? And there's some players that kind of jump out at me. I mean, William Carvalho, he's a Portuguese international. Christian Tello used to play for Barcelona. Sergio Canales, you could go on, the list is endless. Martin Montoya, who used to play for Barcelona as well. But talking about the team, you said there you're struggling for strikers, but what about other areas of the team? Where's Betis strong in? Where can they hurt Celtic? That's the main thing here.
I think it's still to be seen, because with only 2 games played in this season, with new players in the team, it's still too soon to say what is the strongest part of Betis. I'm hoping that the defense are doing better, because that was another big problem last year, scoring too many goals, easy goals, and then don't have opportunities to score goals. So that was always a problem for the team. So I'm hoping that the defense has improved, and then the strikers really start scoring goals. And we have a player, French player, what's the name now? It was a French international. No.
Nabil Fekir, is it?
Yeah, Fekir. Fekir is a great player, but it can be. I don't know if you use this expression. Could be Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in the same team, in the same game.
Yep, absolutely.
Be one moment brilliant, and score a goal, and then 1 minute later he gets a red card because he goes mental. And he needs to have a balance and be more steady and continues playing at the same level. No, it's not gonna help the team if one moment of greatness and then the second moment just go red card. So he needs to improve that, and with him and with Sergio Canales and with our star Joaquin, which is still there after 40 years, still playing for Betis. We hope that it's gonna be a decent year. But historically, if you let me say, every year or every time Betis has played the 3 competitions, the Liga, Spanish Cup plus European competition, he always struggled because we don't have a strong team to compete in the three competitions at the same level. So it's good to have opportunity to play in Europe, but we may suffer in La Liga and in the Copa, in the Spanish Cup, which is always the easiest way to get a trophy. So we cannot really throw to the bucket in the first stages. So it's gonna be interesting season, but as a supporter, I want to see Betis going as far as possible in the 3 competitions and doing well. So we'll see.
I think as well, Vicente, I mean, we as Celtic fans can sympathise with the depth of the squad. I mean, we're going through a major rebuild ourselves in terms of the new manager, Postecoglou, a new team basically being formed in the last 4 weeks. So I can understand what you're saying. But in terms of the game itself, now, you have to be careful here, Vicente. Remember, you're on a Celtic podcast. I'm going to ask you the score prediction. What are you going to go for the game?
Well, do they play in Seville?
Yeah, we're playing away from home the first
time. I will be happy, and sorry to say that, with 1-0.
1-0. What about yourself, Anthony? And obviously, Vicente made great points about their squad. I mean, the captain, he's 40 years old, Yaquan. I mean, I'd probably butchered that name. They always do, but they've got players all over the pitch like Nabil Fekir, Sergio Canales. It will be a tough game. I mean, we're under no illusions. It's going to be a tough game. The group itself is a tasty group, and these games are what we look forward to as Celtic fans. But coming into the game, obviously, on the back of a 3-0 victory against Ross County, what do you think it's going to go like? Do you think it's going to be a positive one from our point of view?
Of course, well, you're always hopeful, Stephen. It's definitely, these are the games that you look forward to as a supporter. Playing your trade against other teams on the continent. Vicente went through a whole collection there. The names just roll off the tongue. These guys are very experienced. They play in one of the best leagues in the world, so that there'll be no shrinking violets, and especially having that massive home advantage that we discussed earlier. I think we can be. We have to say that Betis will be the favourites going into this one. But we've made steady progress since Ange Postecoglou's came in. We'll really be looking to our home games to try and pick up the most of our points in this campaign. But if sitting here right now on Monday night, if somebody was to offer me a point, I would grab it with both hands. But of course, we are on a Celtic podcast, and we've got to be endlessly positive. So I'm going to go the other way and say a narrow 1-0 victory for Celtic.
I mean, myself, like I probably tend to go for a draw here, 1 each. I think if we get a result like that away from home, Anthony, as you said, we'd be looking at the home games to take advantage of, and that's kind of what we kind of have done in the previous Europa League groups, and the ones we got out of. I mean, we kind of took advantage of the home form. We got a point here and there away from home. And I think that's probably the best way Celtic can go about things, especially this early on in the season and under a major rebuild with Postecoglou. But Vicente, coming to yourself before we let you go, in terms of the future aims for Real Betis and the future kind of aspirations for the management team, the squad, where as a fan do you expect to see Real Betis in just say 3 or 4 years?
Ooh, it's very hard because we always get great expectations, and then the reality put us back in the in a different situation. And we had a good manager, and he in the first year he managed to put us back into Europe, which is a very, very, very great for a team like Betis. With the new situation with money wise, it's hard to to sign for better players. We just have to use more players from the Real Betis B, from the youngsters, and hopefully we get new generations that they play for Betis, and they stay in Betis, because what's happening normally is when you have a good player, stays 1-2 years, and then Madrid or Barcelona, they take them away, and then they don't even play for this team. So I don't see the point to go. But never mind. It's all to do about money sometimes. So it would be good to see Betis winning something in Europe, but it's hard to see that happening. I'm sure the Sevilla supporters, the first time they won the UEFA League, they were thinking the same, and now look at them, they have 6 of them. So I'd be happy if we manage to win 1.
I mean, much like us Celtic fans, all we want is to try and put a dent into some European fixtures and maybe go far. And the more years go on, the more the finances get bigger between ourselves, La Liga, the Premier League, and it just seems near impossible to do that, Vicente. And you're right to actually point out Sevilla. I mean, under Unai Emery, they were the masters of the Europa League. I think they won 3 or 4 under him, and that's just fantastic. But look, I want to thank you, Vicente, for coming on and giving us a good insight into Real Betis, the form, and the history about yourself supporting them. It's been great to listen to and great to host as well. And I'm sure Anthony will agree. And I want to thank Anthony for obviously setting this up as well with you, Vicente. Have you enjoyed being on the Endless Celts podcast?
It's been nice to chat with you guys, and I'm hoping that on Thursday we get a good game, we enjoy, and we get a decent result. I'm not saying that Betis has to win for sure, but fair play and good game. And if at the end of the group stages we manage to be first or second or first, that's the main thing, because I think the two first teams are the ones they qualify. So everybody happy at the end.
Celtic and Real Betis. Yeah, I mean, we'll have you again on the show, no doubt, in the near future when Real Betis visit Celtic Park, which I'm sure lots of things in terms of form will change up until that game. So thanks, Vicente, for coming on. We greatly appreciate it, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.
You're welcome, Stephen, and good to hear you as well, Anthony.
Pleasure as always, Vicente. I hope Betis get a good result tonight, and I'll see you at work tomorrow.
I see you in our favorite place. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank
Good night,
you, Vicente. Bye bye, mate.
Bye.
And that brings us on to the next part of the show. And I can introduce my co-host, John. How are you, John?
Hello.
How are you, John? Been
Yeah,
listening to that?
Yeah. I was listening, mate. That was fantastic. And Vicente, when you're listening back to this, mate, as I say, I was listening in. Thank you for coming on. It was good bit of insight into Betis and that. So I really enjoyed that. But yeah, what's happening, boys?
I mean, but as the way we started that show, we've still got so much to talk about. You know what I mean? It's obviously off the back of a 3-0 victory against Ross County, but again, in between Dom McKays stepping down as the chief executive of Celtic Football Club, all the kind of the rumours and stuff that are actually stuck with that kind of decision. So we've got plenty to start with. I mean, me myself, I'll start with the Ross County game first, and I'll come to yourself, John, to give you an opportunity to speak. Yeah. In terms of the game, I mean, Albinieri came into this squad obviously after Kyogo was injured in international duty. By all accounts, he scored 2 goals, and there was poachers' goals. The header was fantastic. And can Ronnie remind me who scored the other goal, because it's escaping my mind at the minute.
It's a Yeti got 2, and the first goal was the deflection from Cameron Carter Vickers. Yeah,
Carter Vickers. So Carter Vickers got that goal, and the first half for me, John, was just think we're just average, to be honest, and I don't really think we got a second gear the whole game. Obviously, we finished 3-0 and probably the stronger team. But what was your opinion of the game anyway?
I enjoy. Can you hear me all right? I just it's not saying
the
mic, sound. It's not saying the mic's picking up anything. But listen. I mean, you're just coming back from an international break. The guys who were on international duty have been playing regularly and training away for the club. The guys that have been here, I think Anne just said before that they've got wee bits of training sessions in, but not too much. And I mean, you'll have the sort of just getting back into the swing of things type thing. So the first half was a bit lackluster. I thought it was a wee bit not boring. I wouldn't say boring was the right word, because I think we dominated much of the possession again. We were getting up and we were creating or getting into spaces where you'd feel we were creating enough chances. We just weren't doing anything with it. I thought a Yeti in the first half, it didn't look like he was going to be scoring at all that night. But I mean, like you says, you still got the full second half to go, and obviously Ange had them and then gave them a wee talking to. And then again, you sort of seen the difference in the levels of stamina between Celtic players and the Ross County boys, because they fair play Ross County, they done well enough in the first half. Not necessarily giving us too much to think about in terms of their attacking, but they done enough defensively to keep it 0-0. But you sort of seen the tiredness set in the name in the second half, and we obviously capitalised on that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point in terms of the fitness levels. Celtic kind of shone through towards the end. But coming to yourself, obviously, there were some interesting calls within the starting lineup. I mean, Stephen Welsh got dropped into the team for Carter Vickers to start alongside Starfelt. Juranovic was in because Ralston was injured. Then further up the pitch, you had the likes of Jada starting. Adaba was on, and Yeti came in as well. So the team itself, I was a bit shocked that Welsh got dropped. I don't know about yourself, but I mean, in the game, Carter Vickers and Starfelt looked comfortable. But did you think that was a bit unfair on Stephen Welsh?
Yeah, it's maybe just been the case. I think he's been away on international duty with the under-21s. And maybe, Ange Postecoglou's just sitting there and thinking to himself, well, as we discussed on Thursday when we thought that there might be the debuts would be getting handed out. If there's I don't like to shout it, there isn't really any easy games, or you'd like to think there isn't, or that Celtic wouldn't approach any as such. But if there is a game where you can put these guys in and let them get some game time under their belt, Ross County at home fits the bill as much as any other. And yeah, I think it was just, it's one of those strange ones. I agree with John. We sort of huffed and puffed in the first half, but we created enough chances to say that if we had taken them and you're sitting 3-0 at half time, Ross County couldn't really have had anything to complain about. We had the lion's share of possession, as we often do at home. But I think just in the second half, again, we missed a few chances before we got that little break with the deflection. And after the first goal went in, it was the sort of, we really just kicked on. Although we have to also give credit to Joe Hart for a good save at 0-0 as well. That's what a good goalkeeper, a top goalkeeper brings. It's those point-saving moments in games, especially at Celtic Park, when he's not going to be called upon too often, but he can be relied upon when he is. So it was one of those, routine sort of victory, or sort of victories that have become routine for us over the years. 3 points, 3 goals, a clean sheet, and I just felt it was a perfect response to the sort of Derby Day disappointment, and obviously some of the sort of news that was breaking on Friday night. We managed to counter that with a good performance and a good win.
Yeah, 100% agree. But in terms of the debut players, John, did any of them impress you? I mean, for me, Carter Vickers looked solid. He strolled through the game. Juranovic again. Obviously, a couple of times he did get skinned by their winger, but he's just adapting, and he did play well towards the end of the game. Yada played well in flashes for me. But what about yourself? Who stood out in terms of the players who were making their first appearance?
Yeah, I thought Carter Vickers strolled it, as you said. He looked comfortable. I mean, this is a guy who's not played in a wee while either. So if you were looking at anybody within that team, or somebody whose legs might have been a wee bit tired or wasn't going to last, you're probably thinking he'd be the guy. So I was surprised to see him start, especially in place of Welsh, as you said, because Welsh hasn't put a foot wrong all season. He's been absolutely phenomenal. So it was surprising, but it was definitely... he had absolutely a great play. I think he won man of the match as well.
Yeah.
So it just shows you the kind of debuts are never easy for new players that come in. So it was good to see him actually not only get a goal but get man of the match as well in his first game. As far as I thought, Jota was great as well. It wasn't the greatest debut performance we've ever seen, but he looked comfortable enough, and he looks like a player definitely. And I think over time, he's going to be somebody that I'll pull out the goods, and he'll be able to. I think he'll score a few goals, create a lot of chances as well. So it's quite good to see. And as far as Juranovic, he obviously looked much more comfortable on the right, because we saw him on the left against Rangers, and he was out of position. But seeing him on the right where he was meant to be, there was a couple of moments where he seemed to switch off. But I think by and large he was absolutely fine.
Yeah, as well, Anthony, as John said, there are the debuts for Celtic, especially at home. Sometimes they go well, sometimes they go bad, and sometimes they're just in between. But Juranovic, by all accounts, was a decent performance, playing in his right back position. It was quite concerning as well seeing Greg Taylor go back off with that recurring shoulder injury. Hope that isn't really a long-term thing, because Montgomery came in, and although we played well there, I just think the depth and kind of that position is a bit off. I don't know what you think about that, Anthony.
Sorry, Anthony, can I just about that, because you mentioned the recurring injury and if it was going to be long term. The fact that it happened so soon into his first game back since picking up that injury is worrying. And like you said, Bolingoli's he doesn't look like he's got a career at Celtic. So Montgomery's the only guy we've got in that position, and that is a bit of a concern, especially as it was an area where we're saying we maybe needed some depth in before the window's shut. And ultimately we didn't actually pick anything up. I know that boy Scales can play there, but is that going to be enough as well?
It's one of the things we'll have to just wait and see. I was going to touch upon Scales, but obviously we didn't see him play. And in regards to the debut players themselves, Anthony, as John said, who stood out for you, like in terms of the star performer of that bunch?
For me, it was Carter Vickers, to be honest, which might sound surprising given that he didn't have a hell of a lot to do, but he was very, very steady. I've seen one comment online describing him as having the physicality of Bobo Baldi and the class of Paul Elliott. So, yeah, no pressure at all on the young man. But, yeah, I felt he really strolled it, and he looked like he'd played there for years. And Jota as well. Juranovic just sort of... It was steady without being flashy, and Jota showed glimpses of what he can do. And I think that when he sort of builds relationships with his teammates, and he gets used to where each player he can start sensing where each one's going to be. I can see him having a real impact at Celtic. But yeah, as Saturday afternoons go, it was a very pleasant day out.
Yeah, this has been kind of an up front, up down show, hasn't it? Like, do you know what I mean? In terms of starting with the Betis game first and moving on to Ross County, but it was the way we started. It was brilliant to do that with Vicente. And in terms of the breaking news that kind of came out of Celtic, John, on the Friday, that Dom McKays stood down from position of the chief executive role. Now, there's been a whole lot of rumours, whole lot of what's been going on and voice notes from certain players that have been debunked by the players themselves, so they aren't true. But there has been articles released by the likes of Steve McGowan for the Daily Mail that kind of go in depth to why this didn't work out and why McKay chose to leave. And what are you saying to it?
Listen, mate, it's an awkward one, because for me, when McKay was appointed and he came in and he officially started doing his job, I thought he was saying all the right things. He appeared to be doing all the right things. He'd done the fan media conferences, and that was his idea. He mentioned that he was going to modernise the club and everything else. So to last as long, to go as long as he did, what was it, 75 days in total or something like that? I don't know the exact.
Crazy.
To then resign, and I mean, as it always is with Celtic, the statements are shocking. There's no transparency. They just keep everything very, very basic. So the personal reasons thing could mean anything, and I really do hope and pray that it's nothing serious, because I've seen a lot of absolute vile nonsense for Celtic fans as well, and it's ridiculous that people come out with this stuff, and it pisses me off, I'll be honest, because the guy's not done anything to warrant it. Right, he's came in, he's taken a position, and for whatever reason he's felt the need, he needs to step down. Now, be that if it is personal reasons, and again, I hope that's not the case and it's nothing serious, but if it's anything else and it's something to do with behind the scenes, that's at board level, that's not his fault. So for fans, Celtic fans especially, to see them attack him and call him all sorts and see some of the absolute shite I'm seeing for some Celtic fans is ridiculous, and it's really, really annoying. But as far as McKay's thing, I mean, like I said, I pray and hope whatever it is that he's all right, his family's all right, and there's nothing untoward or there's nothing bad or anything like that he's felt the need he has to step away. I've heard various different things, but you don't know what to believe. So this is why I'm being careful about what I'm accounting it to. But what I will say is, the bulk of the stuff that I'm hearing seems to be pointing the finger at the board. Their failure to back him, and his suggestions to modernise the club and things like that. Not being happy about the money that just kind of free spending. McKay not being happy about the length of time it takes to get some transfers out of the line, and some being missed because of the dilly-dallying, which is hard to disbelieve, because I mean, we've been through this with Celtic. It's easy to believe stuff like that when you hear it, because we've been through it before, and it does. If somebody was to say that to you now, you'd be like, you can't expect it, and that's the sad thing. And again, we don't know the reasons, and as I said, I hope everything's all right. But if it is anything to do behind the scenes, and it's to do with the board and their interference or anything like that, then every single one of them, and this includes Dermot, like, tap to bottom through that boardroom, need to just walk away, and ASAP, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I echo what you're saying there, John, in terms of personal reasons. I hope it's nothing to do with him himself, with himself or his family. I mean, we all echo that on the Endless Celts podcast. But coming to yourself, Anthony, I think John makes a great point in terms of the various different stories reading and the likely sources to believe, the likes of Steve McGowan, because he's apparently close to the kind of Celtic hierarchy. Alison Conroy released an article as well, and it's all pointing towards the fact that there was kind of disagreements in the back in terms of the boardroom. Ian Bankier wasn't liking the way Dom McKays was going about business, and there's people saying as well that Dom McKays wasn't suited to the role at the end of the day, and sadly called it quits before it got too far. But what's your take on it so far?
Well, on Friday when the news broke, Stephen, we as a group sort of looked at the statement and we sort of collectively agreed unanimously as a group not to record an instant sort of reaction show. And we sort of, the main reason for that was due to the sort of vague sort of elements of Celtic's statement. The first part, of course, being personal reasons. And of course, we didn't want to record anything really off the cuff that we could then maybe regret over the weekend if it was perhaps something to do with healthcare. I suppose even at the time we're recording this, nothing has officially really came out. So we are still perhaps, speculating more than we would like. But I think over the course of the weekend, I think it's been very clear to see that although there has been so much nonsense and fake news circulating around the usual outlets, as there often is with these things. There is enough smoke among certain rumours that you can sort of, whilst it's not maybe not cast iron truth, certainly elements of it starts to paint the picture of what's went on behind the scenes. Celtic will have their version of events, I would imagine. Dominic McKay will as well. We don't know how this is going to affect Ange Postecoglou either. Given the relative closeness of the relationship that those two had. Regardless of who's in the right, who's in the wrong, or anything in between, the fact of the matter is that Celtic have lost a chief executive, a very well sought after chief executive, has to be added to it as well, in less than 100 days in his tenure. Yes, he came in to sort of shadow the outgoing chief executive, Peter Lawwell, in sort of April time. But let's not forget, his role did not officially start until July the 1st, which is incredible, really. If rumours are led to believe that Celtic just they weren't sure of where he was going, then he's surely got to be given a chance to sort of justify some of the decisions that he's perhaps coming to. I mean, let's not forget, this is a board that, despite knowing all of Neil Lennon's limitations, still left them in post way after it was obvious to anyone that could see that the dressing room had been lost. So the idea that you cause this sort of cloud of sort of unknown and sort of starting rumour mills around your own stadium, on the fact of you're maybe just not quite sure if this person's going to fit in. It's really, really bizarre. I'm being charitable by saying it's bizarre, but I think you can imagine just, I feel perhaps a bit more stronger than that. But I think we also have to be careful the automatic thing is to start picking out certain individuals, but certainly from the more reputable sources, it seems to suggest that this isn't actually anything to do with our previous chief executive. So I think we've got to watch where we're firing our shots, so to speak. But with regards to the whole look itself, I was impressed by Dominic McKay when he came in. His record at Murrayfield spoke for itself. I felt. I think him and the new manager seemed to have a good relationship, and we signed a lot of players, yes, but that was all accounted for with player sales. So it's very bizarre that it's happened. And the other thing as well, which is why I think we can almost with a certain degree of confidence say that it's not been anything medical, is his behaviour in removing Celtic from his LinkedIn profile, and also the fact that Celtic's statement was very, very cold. It was, I mean, we're all old fans of the WWE wrestling. It had very much a future endeavours sort of speech, sort of element to it. When that sort of cold, sterile, thanks for your efforts, but we move on.
It wasn't just that, Anthony, that you make a valid point there about that statement. What was it they say about the I forget his name, the head of legal. What was it? Very much a team player.
Yeah, and has the full confidence of the board. They waxed lyrical about his previous experience, and I've seen papal candidates with less lyrical waxed about them than what this individual seems to have. But the worrying thing for me is that this guy has been at the club in a sort of high position for 8 years now. This does not strike me as a fresh idea, modern approach. It seems to be very much repeating the same thing again and again and hoping for a different result. So it's, as I say, no matter us mere minions will probably never know the full story. Celtic will have their version of the truth. Dominic McKay will have his. There will be a whole cloud of hearsay, speculation and conjecture, but at the whole heart of it, there will be the truth in there somewhere. But no matter who's in the right and who's in the wrong, having a chief executive of the biggest club in Scotland in post for less than 100 days does not make for good headlines or good reading.
I remember back. Do you remember back when the press conference when Ange Postecoglou and Dominic McKay and Ian Bankier were sitting together, and we did a podcast about it, and Ian Bankier looked like looked so angry, like he didn't want to be there. He spoke like 3 words and off he went again. But I think it even stems back as far as then. It seems like to me, John, that Dominic McKay, his ideas were maybe a bit too forward thinking for the board, and they've reneged on their decision to keep him in long term post and get him off the ship now, so to speak. And after you bring it back to Neil Lennon, what people fail to realise is Neil Lennon was in with the board anyway. Dermot Desmond's close friend and Peter Law's close friend, and maybe they didn't like the way Dominic McKay was going about things, because I've seen something, John, that Dominic McKay rejected the advances of Peter Lawwell in terms of help, and he wanted to go alone and bring his own ideas in. And then obviously obviously the breakdown in relationship with Ian Bankier came quick, and there's rumours he might be standing down as well. So it's an absolute mess. And you're right to point out Michael Nicholson as well, John. I mean, this guy's been closely linked with Peter Lawwell for years, and Anthony rightly alluded to, he's been in position at Celtic now for 9 years, and now he's walked into this job, and we know from experience he'll probably get the job on a 3-year contract and nothing to be said about it.
Well, that definitely shouldn't be happening, because I think the statement as well tried to sort of push or allude to the fact that he's experienced in that role by saying he stepped in executive roles during his tenure at Celtic, and that is nonsense, man. And like you said, that statement itself was very cold and very vague, and there was certainly underlying tones of sort of no point to blame, but like taking sly digs. That if you were to go through it word for word, then it looks like it's taking a dig at McKay, in all honesty, the way some of the wording is used and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, like it says, we don't know, and we probably will never know, because we know the Celtic board and we know the hierarchy at Celtic are never going to come clean and never going to be transparent, because that's just not what they do. That they've never done it. McKay, whether he or no, he feels the need at some point to come out and disclose what went on. Maybe some point down the line he might do that. If he does, I'll be inclined to believe what McKay says, because I don't know why he would lie about it. The fact that he stepped down so soon, if he came out and then said something that was sort of pointing that it was stuff that was going on behind the scenes, it was lack of faith in him, lack of them sort of looking to take on his ideas and stuff like that, then I mean that would be entirely believable. I don't think there's any or many Celtic fans who would see that and then say, no, that's definitely not happening in the boardroom at Celtic, because they've been like that. It's nothing new, and it, like I say, it's no surprising at all if that is the case. But yeah, it's just madness, it's hard for us as fans to sort of wrap our heads around, because you start and listen, see, as fans, we've got a right to ask and we've got a right to be told the truth and for the club to be transparent. But again, that's not how they work, and we know that that's not going to be the case, and that's not what they're going to do. This talk about Bankier potentially stepping down as well, if that's true, then cheerio, bye. Absolutely won't be missed. I mean, other than what has he done at Celtic, other than just occasionally have his name thrown in on a statement? Like, he's not a face of the club. He doesn't. I don't know what he's like. For me, in fact, listen, most of these guys on the board are the same, and they all just need to go. I think it's time that there was some, for me anyway, like the Messi last season and the Howe saga was the last straw for me. The bringing in Mackay's appointment to Ange, and sort of his talk about forward thinking and modernising the club and everything else was enough for me to say, right, you know what? Maybe the board have done things right this time. And see the fact that this has happened now, I've every part of my being is telling me that this is due to the board and there's something going on behind the scenes. And because of that, I just want them to leave. Like, just go. As far as I want them all to just pack it in.
Well, I mean, they're not even on thin ice anymore. That ice broke years ago, and especially even when Neil Lennon was kept in charge, as Anthony said, well longer than he should have been. They should have been well gone, or at least standing down from position. But they're comfortable in there, John. They really are, and I don't think.
But this is the thing. See, now that the whole COVID restrictions and everything, there needs to be, and there should be, some form of peaceful protest, because as fans, you can't stand by and just continue to let it happen, because that just makes us as bad as them. And I think, like Anthony says, and he made a fair thing. What's the definition of insanity or something, as you said, Anthony, is repeating the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. If you stand as a fan and as a fan base, if we stand by and continue to let stuff like this happen, then we're bringing it on ourselves, because it's you need to, at some point you need to go, enough's enough. And for me, but that we've hit that point now, and it's not a case of thin ice, as you said, Stephen. It's the ice is broke; they're gone, and they shouldn't be rescued.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the double act, Anthony, for a wee minute. Anyway, well, former double act and Postecoglou and Dom McKays. And I remember in the fan press conference there was all them kind of the memes going around. Get someone who looks at Anne's the way Dominic McKay does, and all that love and look he was giving them, and that for me, it's a bit of a worry. I don't know. Obviously, Ange Postecoglou's come out and said, "Be careful with the narrative of who brought me to the club." I mean, read into that what you will, but do you think it's a wee bit unsettling for Ange seeing all this happening behind the scenes, and Celtic are still without heads of recruitment at every position? They're without a director of football, sporting director, chief scout, head of recruitment. It's an absolute shambles, isn't it?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why we have to give Ange Postecoglou so much credit, that he's, in spite of all of it, regardless of whether, whoever brought him in or what sort of structural changes he would like, or anything really, anything that's background noise, it could very easily have a detrimental effect on the playing squad and results. But in spite of all this, because this must have been going on, weeks before, this didn't all just happen on Thursday night going into Friday morning. He has still been able to keep as I keep mentioning, the sort of tunnel vision, take each game as it comes, try and put together some results. He's managed to get us into the Europa League, and we're in we're doing steady in the league. And as I say, I've fast to expect the away record to improve, very quickly. So he's managed to keep things ticking over, in spite of all of this going on in the background. And just the same goes for his post-match press conference on Saturday. Like most other things he's done since he's came in, I was very impressed with it. I think he negotiated it quite well. He managed to. He may well have his own private thoughts, but we certainly were not privy to that. He didn't cause open warfare with the support by either backing or condemning the banner that was unfurled halfway through the match. Likewise, he didn't wax lyrical about the board either. It was very much keeping both sides onside, so to speak. So I think he'll hope now that that this is all of these sort of rumours and sort of gossip, that they can continue on in the newspapers indefinitely. But I think for him, he'll be quite glad to just get out there, as we've seen on the mic'd up training session. He loves being out working with the players. There's no transfer speculation now for a few months. He'll be quite happy just to focus on each game as it comes. But there definitely has to be there are issues above Ange that certainly need addressing sooner rather than later.
I think them mic'd up issues, them mic'd up training sessions, something they're a thing of the past, and I think it was well publicised that Dominic McKay was behind that. Do you know what I mean? So I just don't know, John, in terms of the direction the club are going in. I mean, Dominic McKay obviously spoke about in the fan press conference about leading world-class facilities, world-class kind of management behind the scenes, and you look at the fact that likes of teams like RB Leipzig, Salzburg, he name-checked Brentford as well with their sporting model, and it just seems like to me that the Celtic board have went, nah, that's not for us, let's stick with the same mould, as Anthony said.
That's because they're all dinosaurs, and that's
true.
another reason why they need to go. I mean, there's nothing innovative.
Now you're doing me. You're doing me now.
There's nothing innovative about the Celtic board or anything like that. That's why I think it was, as fans, it was so refreshing to hear McKay speak about it and say about mentioning these clubs that we know have like world class infrastructure and are modernised and moving along with the times. And it was refreshing to see him come out. The fan media thing again, I thought that was fantastic. Putting the fan media before the print media, and giving the fans a say and giving them the opportunity to speak to them, the manager and players and things like that. The mic'd up sessions giving us a bit of insight. That's modernising. Very small things, and I'm sure he had many ideas that he wanted to implement. But again, this I really, really don't understand what is going on. But everything seems to be pointing at the board and the powers that be, essentially. The mess that went on last season, the issue with how, and you thought, right, okay, maybe they're starting to get the things together, as I said earlier, and then this happens again, and it's like one step forward, two steps back, and it's just it's frustrating as a fan. Like Anthony though, you're hoping, like Ange, obviously he's a footballing man and he wants to just focus on the football, and now he can focus on the football. He's never seemed like the type that's going to get involved in any nonsense with the press. I'm sure if they ask him, or if they get close enough to ask him any sort of question regarding the McKay situation, he'll probably avoid it. He'll do it in his own way. He'll just answer it in the way that he answers most questions that he doesn't want to answer, and he'll deflect them expertly. And like, you just hope that he can sort of block that out in terms of the players and everything else. I know that it'll have some effect. I mean, because the players will want to know what's going on. But I'm really, really hoping that they can just focus on the football and then just let the results do the talking and do all their talking on the pitch, and that it doesn't actually sort of affect Ange or his relationship with the board. Because if that was to happen and that relationship broke down, and then we lose a manager at it, I know I'm maybe jumping the gun, and that's like the furthest thing that's for what's happening, but there is a thing called the domino effect, and stuff like this can trigger it, and it's worrying. And like I say, I think there's been a few articles as well for other Celtic media that have asked the question, and we need to ask the question, like, what the board need to come out and tell us what's going on and give us an actual. They need. I mean, we've been begging for it for months and months and months before all this, before McKay, before Ange. During last season, we were begging for clarity, and we've still not got it. And this is just, as I said, one step forward, two steps back for me, and it's mental. But I just want to focus at the minute, or I'm hoping we can just move on and focus on the football.
Well, speaking about the football, obviously you heard me, Anthony, and Vicente talk about the upcoming game against Real Betis and give our score predictions and stuff. So obviously, before we wrap up the show, I want to give you the opportunity to talk a bit about the game and how you're looking towards it, what kind of result you're expecting, and just the end of the wee score prediction from yourself too.
Yeah, I thought that there were fair predictions. I agree firmly with what Anthony says. If you were to offer me a draw, I would take it. I don't think there's any shame in that. Going away to Betis, coming away for that game with a point would be a fantastic result for us at this stage of the season. So if I'm putting all my eggs in a basket, I would say it's going to be a score draw. I'll say 1-1. I still think that there's defensive frailties on their end, and I think a team like Betis might be, especially over there, might sort of capitalise on that. But I think there's enough about us to create chances and score as well. So 1-1, 2-2. I think there'll definitely be goals, but I'm gonna play it safe and go for a draw. I think we'll miss Kyogo here. Giakoumakis, I'm hoping we get to see some of him. Whether or not he's going to be ready or not is another thing. There was no other strikers on the bench against Ross County. We had it Yeti, and that was it. So I'm almost not another case of that. I'd like to see Giakoumakis get a chance, be it just at some point, even if he's coming off the bench. But yeah, I think it's going to be a great game, a fantastic occasion back to European football, albeit the Champions League, with Europa League still a top competition in its own right. And you mentioned as well, obviously, this is the first time it's been held in Seville since the last time we went, and we're in a position now where, is it the first time? I might be getting that mixed up, because Seville have won it a couple of times, and did they not get to host it again?
I think 1 year it was in Seville again.
In either case, though, these things happen, fairy tales happen. So, I mean, as Vicente said, if we can do a Betis Celtic 1-2, I'd be happy with that. Come the end of the group.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game we're all looking forward to, and I want to thank yourself, John, for coming on halfway through the show, obviously listening to me and Anthony and Vicente. And Anthony, I want to thank yourself for getting Vicente on the show. It was great. Have you enjoyed this one?
Oh, absolutely. Stephen, it was great that Vicente was able to join us tonight. Just when the draw was made, I thought this was a wee opportunity. We could maybe get this maybe put something together. So and it's just worked out perfectly. So again, Vicente, gracias amigo for joining us. I've just said amigo there rather than senor. Yeah, I'm worse than Del Boy, man, honestly. But yeah, here's hoping for a good result, a good game and a good result. Although we're hoping obviously Celtic edge it, and yeah, it's all good.
Well, I mean, that's a good way to end the show, amigo. But to everyone who's listening, stay well and keep safe. Hail, hail.